Welcome to this video about Protectorates, Vassals, and Tributaries, the three client empires that you can get within Stellaris. How do they work? What do they do? And how can they grow? Or how can they rise up? How can you suppress them? And what is the special civic that is attached to them as well? First of all, let's talk about our Vassals. Vassals are a client kingdom that you can overthrow, or at least a kingdom that you can overthrow and enlist their armies into yours. Once you have taken a vassal, in this particular case these guys over here, basically what happens is that every single part of their fleet will support you whenever they can. However, this is only in case they are loyal. If we go to the AI attitude map mode, we can see right here that this Star Union is disloyal to the Empire, which is us in this particular case. That means that if we go to war, their fleets will no longer support ours in the overthrowing of our enemies. This is obviously a problem. This means that we need to keep our vassals as happy as possible by giving them resources, by giving them tech agreements, etc. We also have the problem that the relative power of subjects is very bad. This means that the other subjects are relatively weak, they are relatively strong, they are also relatively strong compared to you, so there is a good chance that they will try to liberate themselves. Once a vassal tries to liberate themselves, you will automatically go to war with every single disloyal vassal or tributary within your empire. This is obviously a problem if you're playing a tall empire or, for instance, the One Planet Challenge, because they will try to bum rush your worlds and try to blockade them. This is obviously an issue. So you want to placate them for as much as possible. Vassals themselves, they generally do not expand. However, there is one exception to this rule. If you are a feudal society, which is a civic that you can only get if you are an empire, the vassals will be allowed to expand gradually over time. This basically means that you can sit back in a relatively tall empire consisting of maybe 4 or 5 planets and watch the vassals around you expand like they would normally do as an empire. But they will then support you whenever you are under threat or whether or not you're going to go to war, effectively making you a feudal lord. A very interesting way of playing. I have not really played with it myself all that much, but it's still pretty interesting to do. In this particular case, we have 2 vassals here. We got a disloyal one and a loyal one. Speaking of this loyal one is very interesting because this is a species empire that we've set up ourselves. Basically, once we realized that we had 4 planets and we didn't want all that many because they are pretty good ourselves, we decided, you know what, we still want to expand our empire and our species, but we do not want to add it to our territory. So what I did in this particular case, I sent a colony ship out here, I colonized this planet, and then turned it into a vassal. How do we do this? Well, we can go in here and, well, for instance, on this planet, click on the Create Vassal button, and then basically create a vassal. You kind of want to keep them in line with your planets for a little while until you've kind of developed the planet a little bit. I don't think I've done that very well in this particular case, as they are pretty underdeveloped. Give them a star base, give them a couple of buildings on the planet, give them a little bit of development inside the system, and let them go loose. Especially if you are a feudal lord, effectively what you've done here is create a small client state that will expand in this particular area. This vassal will try to do the same as we vassalize them as well, and also go in towards this general direction. And again, these 2 empires will try to support you with their fleets as you go to war. Then there is the other type of client states. There is the good old Tributary. The Tributary, what it does is it's kind of similar to the vassal state. However, instead of it giving you its fleets whilst in war, they are obligated to, at all times, give you 25% of their income. How does this work? Well, basically, every single month, 25% of their income will be given to you. And we can actually see this in our government window. If we go to our budget, there is a tab called Text Subjects. In this particular case, we get 33.8 energy a month from this empire, especially if you're playing a particular tall empire when you're not really getting all that much energy. This is very useful because it means you can offset your energy income and focus on expanding in space and getting more mineral stations. So when it comes to playing tall, getting tributaries is incredibly useful to basically support your economy. In addition, we can then generate a lot more unity because we're playing tall. Speaking of unity, in the domination tradition tree, there is two very interesting tabs that is interesting to us. First of all, there is the protection racket, which is for tributaries, which increases their income from them by 50%. So basically, instead of getting 25% energy and minerals, we get 37.5 from that, which is kind of good. Then we have fleet levies, which is for vassals. Basically, every vassal increases your naval capacity by amount of 50% of theirs. So if, for instance, a vassal has 100 naval capacity, you will get an additional 50 naval capacity on top of that. In combination with, say, the the Galactic Force Projection Ascension perk, this is incredibly useful because it gives you another 200 plus the vassals, and effectively you become an unstoppable force to be reckoned with, especially if you have vassals that give you a decent amount of naval capacity, plus the wonderful world of the Tributary giving you resources. It basically means you can build a gigantic fleet while at the same time having a relatively small territory. Finally, there is the Protectorate. The Protectorate is a bit of a curious case. A Protectorate is a very weak empire that you have subjugated or given Protectorate status. Basically, what it does is it gives them a 80% bonus to research speed on any technology that you already have. Once they are up to a certain level, they will instantly flip into a vassal status, making them another vassal. And especially if they are a Protectorate, it means that they are very happy with you over a long period of time. Now, speaking of happiness, there is something that is really important that we need to address here if you want to be playing tall with a lot of vassals as well as tributaries. Let's take a look at our government and specifically our civics and species traits. So obviously for civics, we want to have a feudal society so our vassals can grow. We want to have cutthroat politics for monthly influence just in case we want to increase, try to conquer or integrate some of these empires. In addition, there's also something very different that needs to be addressed, and that is our species traits. Because we're going to be playing relatively tall in this particular case, it means that we want to keep everybody as happy as possible. Basically, we want to try to get the charismatic trait within our species. Basically, the ruler opinion impact modifier of plus 25 is a pretty big deal because it basically means that these species will like us a lot more than if we wouldn't have it, and basically the chance of them rising up against us is a lot lower, which is kind of important. In addition, when it comes to our governing ethics, being a little bit xenophile is useful. Lowering that border friction is always good, and the diplomatic influence cost modifier is nice as well. In this particular case, considering I'm playing tall, being a materialist is also very useful indeed. That wraps up a general overview of client empires within Stellaris. As a quick look back, we've got our vassals. They give you fleet power. We've got our tributaries, which gives you resources, and then we have our protectorates, which will turn the vassals once they are at the right tech level. I hope this was useful to you and that you will have a better time playing around with vassals, as they are relatively easy to get. Claiming them in a war is a lot easier than, for instance, just seeding straight up planets, and especially with tributaries, if you are playing very tall, they are incredibly useful to have. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, take good care of yourselves, and as always, each other.